Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com, also video presentation. So, I want to talk about, over there, space-time, okay, and make the simple argument that has now occurred to me. I've always disliked the theory because it doesn't have any mechanical structure. It's just, spooky action, to use Einstein's phrase. His own theory is spooky action. I don't get how he couldn't understand how it is just, an unexplained mechanism causing effects, and that's not a good thing in physics or science, to not be able to explain how it does it. So what has occurred to me, what I have understood, which physics doesn't really say much, is that stuff hits the Earth, okay, constantly. A lot of stuff hits the Earth, and one of the stuff is in this form of gravity. So light hits it, infrared, we don't see that, but that's hitting it. Lots of stuff hitting it. Little asteroids hit it. So there's lots of stuff going towards the center of the Earth, including this gravity stuff. Okay, so they're saying the gravity stuff is being created not by stuff, but by some wooey a warping of space and time. And I'm saying, okay, well then you have to explain what frankly has occurred to me, is that gravity is heating, okay, every body that actually has gravity. So anything big enough to have any substantial gravity is going to get hot. And you can see that things are hot based on their size. So Mercury is, say, 2,000 degrees in the core. Can't really see that, but it's not really a necessary thing for you to see. And let's say the Earth is, well, let me use 4,500. There's different numbers, frankly. And the Sun would be 7,000, and Jupiter would be somewhere around 6, or, more than the Earth, but less than the Sun. And so, yes, everything gets hot based on the stuff going in, and you can understand that based on a lot of experimental evidence. So if I had two steel balls instead of these two things, and I smash them together, bang, and make them stay together, okay, so they can't bounce like a Newton's cradle, the energy will be not destroyed. There won't be any cancellation of the energy, and it will burn a piece of paper, it'll deform a piece of foil, whatever. You can use different things, and you can see that the energy is continuing on its way, okay, and it'll deform the object and heat the object, and then the heat will be dissipated. And this energy, this linear momentum, will be conserved in the sense that the momentum will now continue off as heat, and heat is momentum, heat is stuff moving. So that all makes sense. So this argument almost destroys both the wacky kinetic energy nonsense, 1/2 mv squared, but really the intention is to talk about bent space. So the real problem here with bent space is and this is in the context of, they have a law of thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, that says the universe is going to die a heat death, and it's going to lose all of its energy. And here they have a mechanism that's clearly making energy all over the place, because the absolute fact is all of this heat isn't just stored inside of the Earth, okay? It's not heat storage. The Earth is radiating it, okay? The Sun is radiating its 7,000 degrees, okay? It's radiating it back out into the universe. So even people like Veritasium have conceded this argument in a sense where they're, they say something very similar, in the sense that, yes, the energy goes in as ultraviolet and other kinds of high energy photons, and it leaks back out into the universe as infrared or radio or some lesser frequency radiation, less visible to the eye, you could argue, certainly. And that's all this comes down to, right? Because if we could see the radiation coming out of the Earth, then we'd be more aware of the fact that, well, where's it coming from? The Earth isn't burning coal, and it's not burning oil. It's not a furnace of some kind where we had to stoke it with any kind of fuel. And the fact is in part, you know, some of these people have conceded it, that gravity is creating the heat. And so you're making something that's in the universe and real energy, out of a bent space. Do you get the problem? Isn't this this isn't conservational, because nobody's going to give me the explanation for how this radiant infrared radiation, let's just say it was all infrared, you know, just to make it a simpler argument. How do I get the infrared to turn into the bent geodesic? How exactly does the infrared radiation bend the geodesic? How does it make that happen? Because that's the only way you could have energy conservation. There's no, you have to have some mechanism where the thing causing the heat is explained, or you have a free energy source. Like every gravitational body in the universe would be expelling a bunch of free energy, because it's all energy that can do work in the universe. It is, in fact, the heat from the Earth heats the moon. Okay, it does work on the moon. It goes through the universe and lands on other planets and pushes on them. So everything is getting pushed by this heat in the universe, this thermal radiation, flying through the universe. You go anywhere in the universe and it's not going to be absolute zero. It's going to be something higher than that, because there is actually energy passing through all of that empty space. And it's a huge volume of empty space. So just understand that when you say it's cold in empty space, well, just think of the fact of how much space there is between all of these little pieces of matter. The amount of space to mass of matter, in terms of how much volume they're taking up. The matter's taking up this infinitesimally small amount of volume of the space. So yes, if the space has any temperature at all, when you add up the huge volume of all of that space, all of that empty space between us and another galaxy, it's a huge volume of empty space, and all of that energy is actually going to go, you know, somewhere. And it's going to hit stuff, and it's going to do work, and it's going to pressurize planets. It's what it's going to do. It's going to heat them. So the obvious cycle, okay, I'm saying it's obvious. I don't know how physics, I don't know how everybody falls for this stuff, and they just never did any, you didn't scrutinize any of these theories, and you're waiting for me to show up to do it all. It's amazing how many things you just totally overlooked as being, oh shit, there's no explanation for that, is there? So the real explanation is the radiation from that leaks out of one body, does in fact create the radiation that's pushing stuff into the other body. It's making the gravity. The gravity is in fact in the form of that infrared and radio and all those other kinds of little bits of photonic energy that's traveling through the universe. And it has to be photonic. And so that's the other part where you say, gee, doesn't, So the gravitational lensing people, the gravitational waves, their theory is that somehow two things collide and the matter destroys, disappears, the mass, and it is converted into bent space, some sort of wave of a gravity thing. Well, the fact is it has to be something real. It has to be real radiation, and the radiation can only push. It can't pull. There's no pull radiation. So all you can do is have even less energy than empty space, which would be very, very little, right? So it's not even, even that doesn't make much sense as a push-pull thing, because you're talking about at the great distances we're talking about going through space. It's this tiny amount of variation in some sort of field of energy, and it has to be a field of energy. Now they theoretically know they can't use real energy, because if they use real energy, then every time one of these black hole collisions things happened, they'd have to accept that the space around them would be evacuated by that intense amount of radiation. Be so much radiation it would literally push things out of the way, and you'd see the empty space around that place in space. So that's why they didn't use real radiation, and you know, but never mind that. Okay, the fact that this implicates a bunch of other dopey theories isn't really my point in making this video. I'm just making it to clarify that, yes, my opinion of space-time is that it's absolute nonsense because it has no sourcing. It's completely a free energy mechanism if you take the facts seriously. That is, the fact that gravity is what's heating the core of planets and suns and moons, you know, whatever, asteroids. They're all heated to some extent based on how much pressure they can create. And the more mass they have, the more pressure they can create at their core. And all of that's being created, and all that energy is escaping. None of it is stored in any, like, they store a minute's worth. Okay, now maybe it would take longer than that to dissipate the energy, but I'm just arguing that they're not storing millions of years of gravity. They're just storing a tiny, whatever, millisecond, a second to 5 seconds worth of a differential between what goes in and what comes out. And that's the differential you fall into, is the very fact that the energy takes time to get through the Earth, through all of this competing with each other. It has to fight with each other and then escape. The time it's taking fighting with each other and the slow rate at which it escapes is the differential you're being affected by right now. That whole differential has been created because energy in the universe is hitting below you, the other side of the Earth. It's pushing through the Earth, and it's taking a while before it gets to your ass. And that's the truth of it. But the stuff coming down right now isn't slowed down. The stuff I'm getting from space is going to hit me. The stuff down there that would have hit me if I was in empty space ain't going to hit me for a while. The future. It's going to hit me in the future, which I can't do the future now. So right now I'm going to be in a differential because there's more energy, you know, pushing me down from space than the energy pushing me up. And there's more energy by that timed differential. At any one moment, the two things are equal. But the fact is, this happens first, and this reaction happens second. You push into the Earth first. The Earth pushes you back after you pushed into the Earth. You have to create the pressure that actually pushes you out. All right, and that's how the game works. So it's real energy. They have no explanation. Like I said, why have a second law of thermodynamics that suggests that somehow we're going to run out of energy in the universe when your theory of bent space is constantly creating heat engines? And everywhere there's mass, there's a heat engine. And the more mass you have, the more heat you have. So there's no way you could run out of energy. Okay, no chance. And the idea that, okay, you're going to move further and further apart from each other in space, the argument still is, well, you can't really get away from each other, right? The truth of the matter is, I can't escape you. Yeah, you know, in the sense that, well, yeah, I can make you further apart, but that's not going to change the fact that your energy is going to be hitting all the other stuff. It just means how much of your specific energy will hit me, and I'll be looking at a much bigger universe. So the bigger the universe gets, the more of it there is shooting photons at me from different directions. It's a bigger volume. So it's the same argument you can make about gravity inside of a hollow sphere, that there would really be no gravity because no matter where you are, you get closer to one side and it says, okay, the gravity is really strong here to this side, but it's over a very small amount of area. And the gravity this way is very weak, but it's a really huge amount of area that you're getting hit by. So this light is really big and produces very few photons. This light's very small. and produces a lot of photons. And the fact is, no matter where you move, it'll always be 50-50. So no matter where you go, you expose yourself to more from one side. Behind you gets bigger, so to speak, or however you want to look at it. You know, light gets smaller and more intense versus bigger and you know, less intense, but it's always the same number of photons. You can't escape the number, the amount of energy there is. So there is no gravity inside the sphere. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's probably enough of a statement. So there's no conservation of energy in the bent space theory, and the idea of bent space-time is just a frivolous silliness, because once you establish it's not bent space, then you know the only part where time is at all involved here is that it does in fact take time for the sun's radiation to get to the earth. You know, it takes the 8 minutes. So yes, time is involved in what happens in the universe, and time is clearly connected to the constant speed of the forces, the speed of force. And yes, so there's a relationship, but it's no kind of relationship where you say you smash the two things together and say they're somehow connected in some intimate way. They're not. Time is a function, okay, and it's happening because there's a speed to the force, and that's the only reason why there's anything called time. If the force was instantaneous, no time. And the simple truth is the gravitational effect is a real energy effect. There's real energy pushing you into the earth, pushiverse. It's pushing you into the earth. It goes into the earth, and then it comes back out of the earth because you can't destroy the energy. So the energy coming out of the earth, the heat radiating from the earth that was created by gravity, all right, is obviously the gravity had to be energy. The gravity had to be energy because it's the only way you could recycle and have conservation. So it's a fatal flaw in the bent space nonsense and any kind of idea that gravity is being created by some kind of new mechanism of physics called the bent space. There is no bent space. There's just a force differential. You can be located somewhere where there's a force differential, where less force is hitting you from one side than the other side, and you will be pushed into the differential. Simple explanation explains how it works, will be consistent with all the evidence, blah, 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 blah. So it's really bad theory, and you know, the hole in it is gaping. Besides the fact that it breaks all of the other, just the idea of quantum mechanics and this idea that everything has to, you know, obey these physical rules. It was right from its start a spooky action theory where you just invent something to cause the effect. Instead of have a real cause, you just invent some new thing. Just like they invented the strong force when it was completely unnecessary, because you just, you know, if you knew anything about charges, you know, you got two protons and you're saying, how can I get two protons close together? Well, the obvious answer is you stick an electron right there between them and they'll get really close together. And you don't need anything called a strong force. You don't need some special new force to push protons into each other. All you need is an electron between them. And it's just so obvious that that's a perfectly rational explanation, and all of this mush is just that. It's made up and catastrophically flawed if you're going to apply honest reasoning and logic. It can't survive a is it logical test. It's not. All right, enough said. So, till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot.